Yes. The traveling fair coaster. The coaster type that, at least in the United States, are usually filled with one-trick pony coasters of wacky worms, wisdom ride coasters, Zyklons, and spinning mice, thanks to the lack of Schwarzkopfs in the States. Now, usually these coasters are likely there to fill a spot of a roller coaster at these fairs, while being affordable and marketable for being a roller coaster. Now, while these rides usually have forces, these rides usually lack moments of forces that usually exclusive to two moments. However, thankfully, there is a ride that I've ridden at my local fairgrounds, being the San Diego County Fair, that while not the best coaster, the ride still provides a more variety and moments of forces in its compact layout. That's being the Windstorm model. And along with that, riding this layout at the county fair in 2024 and 2025, I've also ridden a clone of this at Glenwood Caverns in Glenwood, Colorado in the previous year, called Cliffhanger, which would be the first roller coaster clone I've ridden more than once. So let's just see how the ride works to its advantage. The Windstorm layout, which can be referred to as the Hurricane model, was originally and most commonly manufactured by S.D.C. during the 1990s and like the 80s, designed as a coaster layout that can be relocated for many locations, which was notable for traveling fairs. While not the most thrilling coaster that the company has produced, the ride would be more thrilling while being a compact option compared to the more popular Galaxy and Zyklon model. However, according to RCDB, S.D.C likely went bankrupt around 1993, and their product licensing was sold to CNS, SMNMC, and Zamperla. The latter two would sell at least one of these, notably going to more established parks like Florida's Old Town, later relocated to Maryland's Adventureland with the Zamperla installation, or Celebration City's Thunderbolt, that would later be relocated to Glenwood Caverns as Cliffhanger from SMC. Other operating installations at more established parks are Alpine Blizzard at Brazil's Alpine Park from SMMC, both Hurricane coasters from New Mexico, Western's Playland, and Florida Race City PCB from SDC, and a variation of layouts with Runaway Mountain at Six Flags Over Texas, built by Premier Rides, strangely. From my experience, I would ride both Cliffhanger on July 23rd, 2023, and the S.D.C variation with the newer of the two reported Windstorm coasters that operated at San Diego County Fair, called Raptor Coaster, July 3rd, 2024, and June 18th, 2025. That operated by RCSFun Tours. Now, in terms of location, these rides are located closer to the edges of their respective parks. Cliffhanger is located on its own path upon a hill of Glenwood Caverns, while Raptor was located near the northeastern area of the Fun Fair's entrance. Additionally, Cliffhanger is accompanied by the ride pass that includes all rides, while Raptor is a one-time pay-per-ride option to cost equivalent of $8 for 8 tickets, not including the $40 purchases of unlimited wristbands that the fair offers on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Had their deals with the fair going on during this entire month of June and the first week of July. Now, in terms of my visits to each ride, these waits were thankfully shorter than other premier coasters, although it's likely due to these locations holding more appealing rides for both locations for guests, along with the lower crowds of the locations in general. Therefore, Cliffhanger would have no wait whatsoever, while Raptor would have a short 10-minute wait. Both rides would also accompany 2 trains that hold 12 riders, one for loading while the other traveling the course. Which, while not as good as other larger fair coasters, was still fine for capacity, especially for the ride duration and overall train capacity being shorter compared to other fair coasters. Now, in terms of trains, the ride would occupy 3 cars of 4, which the ride is supporting a singular U-bar and a small but padded seat. Personally, I would find these trains serviceable in comfort, although not particularly notable for comfort, really. At most, it feels a little cramped, but nothing too bad. Additionally, for each coaster, I've ridden both the front and back on Cliffhanger, and the middle and back for Raptor Coaster. Recently, we also did the front as well. So for this ride model, the back likely produces the most quantitative and forceful moments of force on the ride. Anyways, once boarded, the ride ascends a 60-foot tall lift hill. On this model, the left view typically gives a view of the layout and may be expected. However, Cliffhanger at Glenwood Caverns is notable for the ride being directly next to a mountainside and views above 1,000 feet off from ground level. Now, there's a claim that Cliffhanger is the highest non-alpine coaster in elevation with over 7,000 feet above sea level, but I've heard a rumor that Mexico City could technically have a higher elevation, and that Superman at Six Flags Mexico could be highest, but I don't know if this is a claim it could be true. So I would rather just, trust the park saying Cliffhanger is the highest elevated coaster. But regardless, the views are pretty cool on a coaster. Anyways, starting off is a small descending turn. In the back, there's some brief but weaker laterals when descending. Afterwards follows an airtime hill, giving a brief pop of floater in the front. Next comes another brief lateral moment in the back, when descending the elevated turn similar to the first turn. This then falls towards the largest drop, where the ride experienced brief positives in the valley and a decent lateral snap in the force for the front and middle. Additionally, on Raptor Coaster, the drop in turn also does result in some shakiness, although mild enough to not really cause discomfort. Now, so far, the ride would stay consistent in forces, although be quite mild. Well, the ride would attempt next is by far the most forceful and sole signature element of the ride. Now, despite being marketed by the San Diego County Fair as an inversion, this is really just a steep twisting drop followed by a steep incline, now dubbed the Non-Inverting Norwegian Loop, as the element has a look of the element, but would never really invert. For this element, the back would be guaranteed on both versions to get sudden but decently strong bursts of laterals on the first drop, which feels pretty comparable to the twisting drop on Mance's second half at SeaWorld San Diego, although with less of a restraint, although no airtime. Then the Windstorm model falls with good positives on the valley of this element, before ascending into the twist out of the element, giving good laterals on the Raptor Coaster's middle car. Honestly, for a ride that's mostly family friendly and also a traveling coaster model, I actually appreciate throwing the element into the mix in order to give variety to a layout that has a quantitative amount of family friendly elements. Next follows a straight section that leads into the helixes of the ride. Here, the decent positives and strengths are sustained throughout the second half of the helix on Raptor Coaster version, whereas Cliffhanger is a more brief during this section. Then there's a downward slope designed for speed increase, which follows with more sustained positives on both versions. However, Raptor Coaster is sustained throughout the entire portion, while Cliffhanger is on the lowest section. After that, the ride heads into their brake runs, which ends both experiences. Honestly, for a fair coaster, I liked how the ride felt somewhat consistent in forces, along with how various the ride felt in forces and elements, highlighted by the non-inverting Norwegian Loop. However, I would say that in the terms of criticisms I have for the layout, the coaster has a slower and less eventful first half, prior to the non-inverting Norwegian Loop, as not only the ride has much more briefer forces, but the speed with the first three elements felt slower, which I understand that the layout was designed during a time where consistent speed wasn't prioritized in building, but I would say for the top section, the layout did feel slow. Additionally, unlike Zyklons or spinning mice that travel to this fair, the ride is more quicker and limited in elements. While the Windstorm utilizes more elements in terms of forces, I do wish that the more elements would be used or added, so the ride would feel somewhat longer. Finally, I like to mention that for the Cliffhanger's version, that the ride would run slower compared to Raptor Coaster, specifically on the helixes, which actually decreases the ranking for that specific version. That said, I do have somewhat of a ranking for each of them. In terms of Raptor Coaster, I would rank this at 47th out of 76, above Tidal Twister, given that at least Tidal Twister had a consistent motion with a little bit longer ride, even though, yes, that ride only has one moment of, force. Cliffhanger at 48 will actually be above Ninja. This is because I think Cliffhanger has more moments that includes a more forceful, moment of, force. Has a higher quantity as well, so even though, I wasn't really much a fan of, Ninja swinging, I did, I did prefer Cliffhanger, in which Ninja had, I think 3 positive G-forces. We'll get to that review later on, but, in terms of, each windstorm model, I did rank each of them next to each other, with Raptor Coaster being superior, pretty much. Anyways, as of right now, we'll probably be going to the Elitch Gardens roller coaster, starting with I think Twister 3, for our next review. This was originally going to be San Diego County Fair review, but that's a script that's pretty hard to write, so maybe next season, maybe. We'll see.